This video is going to finish up chapter 1. Let's review the grand staff, and then we're going to move on to talking about the ledger lines, the piano keys, and some other symbols and terms that are also included in chapter 1. So as a review, the grand staff was when you have the treble and bass staves joined together by a brace. Now the brace is what you see over on the left-hand side at the bottom. It can either be curvy like the one on the left, or sometimes you'll see it written as this brace is on the right-hand side. Either one would be correct. I usually draw it as the one on the left. But the grand staff is when both staves are combined. There's a line that connects the two, and then there's the curvy line. Usually you'll have a grand staff when you have notes that are going to be both in the treble clef and the bass clef. If you're in band, sometimes you might only get your music on the treble clef or on the bass clef. That's fine. The conductor or the orchestra director usually has the full score, which has all of your parts on there. Pianists usually will have a grand staff and sometimes even more staves than this, depending on how many lines of music they have to read at the same time. Remember that middle line is middle C. So the middle line that kind of gets drawn on its own in between the treble clef and bass clef is where you draw in middle C. So middle C is always either underneath the treble clef because it's lower than the lines and spaces in the treble clef, the pitch is lower, or it's above the bass clef because it's higher than the pitches that would be drawn in down here. Middle C sounds like this, and then the bass clef notes are the ones that are drawn in below that, and the treble clef pitches are the ones that are higher. Okay, but middle C is the one right there in the middle of your piano. If you have a keyboard that doesn't have the full keyboard, sometimes it's a little bit to the left or to the right, but it's whatever the middlemost C is. Okay, so that middle line, middle C. All right, next we're going to talk about what that line is called. The line we just saw that middle C is drawn on is called a ledger line. Now, a ledger line, the definition is down here at the bottom. It's a short line that is placed either above or below the staff to represent those notes that are either above or below the staff. So ledger lines are either extra high notes, and these are high notes since they're above the treble clef, or if we were looking at a bass clef and they were down below the bass clef, those would be low notes. Now I'll get to further instructions on the way that we're going to draw the ledger lines in so that you're not confused about these notes, and I'll explain to you the easiest way to count up. But if you'll look here, the easiest way is just to make sure that you know what that top line is. So if you know that the top line, if we were looking at these in the treble clef, that top line was F, then you know that the next one up is going to be a G. And now the next one doesn't have a line yet, but that's because it sits on top of that F line. So don't forget this G right here. A lot of people will forget that G. But that G is a space note. So F's a line note, G is a space note. But now we need another line note. We can't just draw some random A way up here, bloop. No, we wouldn't really know what it was if we didn't have that line. So that line tells us that that's going to be our A. So F is the top line of the staff. G sits on top of the staff, basically. A is where we start drawing in the lines. Now notice the line goes to the middle of A. Next, we keep the line there, but the note goes on top of the line. That's going to be a high B. It's one of my favorite notes to sing, just so you know. Next, we have high C. Notice that now we have to draw in that second line. So that's our high C. When you hear people cracking glass with high C, that's the high C they're talking about. And it just keeps on going from there. After that, it sits on top of that second line. Next, you draw in another line. You can really keep going forever, even past this F. I mean, those would be super high notes, but they certainly do exist. Again, I'll get to further instructions on this later, but it works the exact same way underneath the bass clef, except remember, if we're going down under the bass clef, you're not counting forward in the alphabet, you're counting backward in the alphabet. And I'll also explain the notes that are in the middle between the treble and bass clef. Okay, but from now, let's go ahead and finish up the PowerPoint with these terms, and then I'll get to some further instruction for you. All right, so the piano keys. Now this is just a cursory look at the piano keys. I'm gonna sit at my piano and show you on the actual piano where the keys are as well, because sometimes that will help. But it's really just a pattern, and pianists will know that we just always look at the pattern of the black keys to tell us which white key we're talking about. So remember, the musical alphabet only is letters A through G. There's no H's, I's, or J's, or K's. So as long as you can figure out where one letter is and remember it, it just keeps on going in order. For instance, I always just start with middle C. So see where my mouse cursor is here? Middle C. Middle C, since that's the middlemost note on the piano, and a C scale, which we'll get to like way in chapter 4 or 5. Okay, so a C scale has no black keys, it's only white keys, which is why I started on C. But you'll notice that C is to the left of those two black keys. So if you know that, then that's a C. Here's another C right here because it's in front of the two black keys. And actually this one right here is another C. Now my picture doesn't go that far, but you would know that it's not just one key. There's another black key after that because it's always in groups of 3s and 2s. So anyway, if this is our C, D's in between the two black keys. Here's another D here. That would be another D there. Oop, one way down there too. Okay, after D comes E, just like the regular alphabet. E's after the 3 black keys. So where's another E? Can you put your finger on it? I'm waiting. Okay, I don't know if you're right or wrong because obviously I can't see you, but hopefully you put it here or maybe down there. That's the only one we can see, but there would be another one up here as well. Okay, F. Now we're in front of the 3 black keys. So there's an F, which you do not want to get in this class. After F comes G, in between the first 2 of the 3 black keys. And now what happens after G? Well, it tells us right there, so I hope you can see that it says A. But just remember, in music, after G, we always start over again with an A. And then this one would be B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. The whole piano works that way, as long as you know the pattern of the blacks and whites and where the white keys fall. Okay? I'm going to show you this more on the real piano, show you my skills, my chops, but for now let's go on and we're going to move on to the rest of the PowerPoint. Okay, so just know that each of the white keys is a particular letter. That's the pitch that is played. I already said that. They're in groups of 2s and 3s. And the way you find it, we already said, is by looking at that pattern. Okay, now you've probably seen these symbols. These symbols relate to our pitch, and that is also represented by which key we play on the piano or whatever instrument you have or voice. This sign right here is not pound sign. Nope, it's not pound sign like the Kevin Fowler song. This is a sharp. So a sharp raises the pitch a half step higher. If you don't know what a half step is, that's just the smallest increment in pitch that we even have in our cultural music that we have here. Some countries might have a smaller step, but we only have half steps and whole steps. So anyway, let me play it on the piano for you so you can hear it. So this is a C, this is a C sharp, here it's a little higher, C, C sharp. On the piano, it is the black key that is to the right of the white key. In fact, most of the time if you see a sharp on the piano, it is going to be a black key, although there are some exceptions, but for the most part it is. In singing, you just move your voice up a little bit using your ear and matching pitch. On different instruments, you're going to have different fingerings, maybe use different air pressure if you're on a wind instrument to get those sharp notes. If someone is singing sharp, they're singing a little bit too high. Okay, opposite. This one is a flat. This lowers the pitch by a half step. On the piano, this is usually the black key to the left. Now, I write this as the black key, but you'll notice if you look on the piano, there is not a black key in between E and F or B and C. So those sometimes are not going to be the black key, but we'll get to that in a little while. But for the most part, I want you to think about it as far as the key to the left, which is generally the black key in simpler keys. All right, this symbol right here, natural. You make me feel like a natural. Okay, just kidding. Natural cancels out a previous sharp or flat. So in music, if you have seen a sharp in a measure, then normally you would keep on playing that note sharp until you see a natural. Or if the key signature, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it is okay, because we don't even talk about key signatures for a long time. But for my musicians out there, Remember, if you have your key signature at the beginning, that tells you what sharps or flats you play or sing in that song. But if you see this natural, you play the regular pitch. You don't play the sharp or the flat note. Okay, let's move on. So here are some flat and sharp examples on the piano. And here's the way that you draw them. When you draw this, which, by the way, what letter would that be? We did that last week and last PowerPoint and last video. So that pitch would be a G, and we say G sharp. Even though the sharp's in front of it, we say G sharp. I know, it's kind of weird. Next, what letter is this? Ding, ding, ding. I hope you said A, and that's an A what? Flat, and that's how we write it. So we say it, A flat. The way we draw it on the staff is we put the symbol in front, but when we write it out or when we say A flat. Now, why is that? It's not just to confuse you. It's so that when a musician is reading their music, they anticipate that flat or that sharp. They see it, and then they can go ahead and adjust their fingering, or if they're a singer and they're sight reading, they can go ahead and be thinking and singing the correct pitch. On the piano, G sharp and A flat are actually the same piano key, and they're the same pitch out loud. Depending on the key that you're reading in, it could just be written in two different ways. So that pitch out loud, okay, there's G sharp or A flat. Again, it just depends on the key. Some composers are going to have a preference of which key that they like to write in. Some players or musicians are going to have keys that they like to play in. Some people, it might be easier in one key or the other, or some people have a preference on which sound that they like. But anyway, same pitch out loud can be written in two different ways. That's called an enharmonic note. I'm not gonna quiz you on that, but hey, maybe that'll be extra credit someday. Enharmonic, E-N, and then the word harmonic. All right, a few more terms, and these might show up later on midterm or something, but these are some important terms from first chapter. An octave, that's when you have two consecutive pitches with the same letter. Now, obviously, we don't have two consecutive pitches in a row because we go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So these notes are basically 8 apart. So from a A to another A, or a C to another C, those are all octaves. Pitch class are just all those C's or A's or whatever I just played for you. They're all the notes that have the same letter. We consider them to be in the same pitch class. Double sharp and double flat. Just look at what these terms look like for now. We're going to get to these later on, especially when we do intervals and building scales. But instead of putting two sharp signs next to each other, it looks kind of like a funky X, a double sharp. What does that mean? Well, it's probably pretty logical what it means. Instead of sharping it once or moving up 1/2 step, we double that. So we go up 2 half steps, or 2 piano keys if you're visualizing the piano. 2 halves make a whole. So basically it's going up a whole step if you know what steps are. If not, we get to that later on. But you go up 2 half steps or 2 piano keys. And so sometimes, for instance, if you're starting on a C, you sharp it once, that takes you to C sharp. You sharp it again, that actually takes you to D on the piano, so you're going up to a white key. You might want to rewind this and look at the piano and say that again, but I'll explain it in another video. Double flat is the opposite. You go down 2 half steps or down a whole step. Okay, and you do put both of those 2 flats next to each other for a double flat. Again, we'll get to this more later, but you do need this knowledge. Get it up there. Stick it in the brain. All right, last couple things. Just look at what these look like. So someday, if you see them in music, you'll remember, hey, I got taught that one time. But certain instruments, actually, I had to play viola when I took a strings class, and the viola actually reads the alto clef. And in the alto clef, middle C becomes this middle line, which really plays with your head if you're used to reading in a different clef. And then this is what a tenor clef looks like. And you'll see this once in a while as well, especially in some older music. But the tenor clef, middle C, is now the 4th line. I've never had to read anything in tenor clef, and I'm pretty happy about that. All Alright, so that concludes chapter 1. As far as me explaining the PowerPoint, I am going to do a couple additional video shots for you explaining further about ledger lines and flats and sharps, but hopefully this gives you a good starting point.